What's up everybody, Nate here, and we just got the most recent numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they paint a really strong picture for our entire economy. Job numbers were much stronger than the Dow was estimating, and our unemployment rate didn't actually go up in November. It stayed exactly the same from October to November. And while this does kind of prove that our economy is really strong right now, it sort of gives the Federal Reserve a tough decision to make down the road. So today I want to talk about where jobs are at in the United States right now, what this means for the Federal Reserve, and of course, what we can expect to see from our economy next year. So over the month of November, the United States actually added around 263,000 jobs. This is right in line with what we have been adding over the past 3 months. Unemployment in the United States also stayed right at 3.7%. That is the same exact number that it was during October. Payrolls also increased by around 0.6%. So what this all means in general is we have hundreds of thousands of more jobs being added, and that businesses are still looking for people. Payrolls are increasing because businesses have the money to spend on new positions. With unemployment staying historically low, that means that we have millions of Americans who are employed and can go out and spend money, and they can contribute to businesses trying to up their productivity. And that is really positive, especially since we have really high inflation right now. Payrolls actually increasing means that Americans have a little bit more buying power with their money. They're getting a little bit more money, they're getting these raises, so now they can go out and buy more, which is important with prices skyrocketing by 7.7% over the last year. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other things going on in the jobs market. In November, around 76,000 people were laid off, and the vast majority of these workers are in the tech sector, and tech has been getting hit really hard because of the Federal Reserve's interest rates and a lot of economic slowdown. What this job growth means to the Federal Reserve, though, is actually the complete opposite, because the Federal Reserve has been doing all that it can to actually cool down the labor market for pretty much the entirety of 2022, and they do that through their interest rates. The federal funds rate and their interest rates currently sit at around 3.5 to around 4% in the United States, and what that does is affect the borrowing ability for investors and businesses, and of course consumers. Now, from the Federal Reserve's point of view, they have to be very careful with the labor market, and they have to kind of keep an equilibrium between price stability and how many people are actually employed. From their view, if we have too many people making too much money, then that kind of creates a big problem for our economy, because now you have a lot more people going out and buying things, and when you have a lot of raises and a lot of people who are employed, now you also have really high inflation because businesses have to continue raising their prices because people make so much money. But that creates an endless cycle, because if businesses raise their prices, now people won't be making enough in order to buy all of the same things. So now they have to get raises in order to buy more, but then again, businesses have to raise prices. And the reason for that is because they don't have enough products or supply or the people in order to continue to produce more and more and more. They have to take on additional costs like hiring people and getting more resources. So all of that, like I said, comes at a cost to them. So prices just continue to go up and wages continue to go up forever. And that means you do not have stable prices in your economy. And if you don't have stable prices, then you're also not going to have a stable jobs market. So what exactly does the Federal Reserve do? Well, they raise their interest rates. This puts a big damper on businesses and consumers and investors, because now they're not going to have that additional liquidity. They're not going to have the same amount of money to grow their business. And when we talk about growing business, we talk about hiring people and building factories and expanding products. Businesses are not going to be able to do any of that if they don't have the money for it. So the Federal Reserve has been raising their interest rates because they want to keep inflation controlled, and they want to control the amount of people who are employed, so that way prices also remain stable and they don't have to continue to print a whole bunch of money like we saw over the last couple of years. Jerome Powell this week actually had a pretty big press conference, and he talked a lot about what the Federal Reserve is going to do next with its interest rate policies, and he hinted at the fact fact that they could start slowing down their interest rate hikes in December and possibly into 2023. It just depends on the data. Well, this is one of the big data points that Jerome Powell was talking about. Jobs. And with jobs staying strong, that might mean the Federal Reserve has to raise interest rates even more, and they keep them very high and restrictive for a long time. Right now, the federal funds rate is well above the neutral level, which is around 2.5%. It's at 3.5% to 4%, meaning that businesses are getting hit hard right now, but they simply have too much money. They simply have too much investments, and investors are still putting their money behind businesses. That is a problem because we're starting to see a lot of raises and we're starting to see businesses overhire people. This is something they did a lot in 2021 when we had a ton of money flowing around the economy and really low interest rates. Businesses were hiring left and right because they wanted to increase productivity and they wanted to grow their business. So in doing that, they kind of paid a lot for their workforce, but now they're starting to realize that maybe they have too many people and maybe they need to start cutting. We haven't really seen that from the general economy just yet. We're seeing it from tech startups and a lot of your tech giants because these companies have really thin margins. They don't really make a ton over their costs. They don't really have a lot of revenue. So with that said, they don't really have a lot of access. If they start taking on too many costs, that means they have to start saving money somewhere. That could mean firing people. But again, we haven't really seen that on a big scale yet, which means that the economy is still really strong and they're not really responding to all of these Federal Reserve interest rate hikes, and the Federal Reserve is going to have to do something until they see one of two things. If they see inflation starting to come down, then that means that prices will eventually be stable. Now, that could mean the jobs market remains really strong, but not necessarily. If prices are remaining stable, then that could mean people aren't buying as much because prices were very high, or people are unemployed and they don't have jobs, which means they don't have money, which means they don't have an income to go out and buy things. Or it could mean a lot of these scarcity problems that we have with energy or supply chain issues are suddenly starting to go down because a lot of the global turmoil is also ending. But whatever happens, the Federal Reserve has one monetary tool, and that is interest rates. So basically what I'm getting at is this: because the Federal Reserve is looking at the jobs market right now and saying, jobs market is still really strong and we've got to do something about that because businesses are going to continue to hire people and they're going to continue to pay them more, which means inflation is just going to go up. That means we have to raise our interest rates, and we could keep our interest rates really high into 2023. The effects that that could have on our economy could mean that unemployment starts to spike. It's important to mention here too that inflation numbers like CPI and of course the jobs numbers are what's called lagging indicators. These numbers are not going to be jumping immediately the second the Federal Reserve raises their interest rates or lowers them. It's going to take a little bit of time because think of the hiring process, right? I mean, a business has to go through an entire process which could sometimes take weeks in order to hire one single person. So to put that on a grand scale for the entire country, that is going to take months. So basically the numbers that we have right now for the jobs market are lagging from what the Federal Reserve has done months in the past. And that is something that the Federal Reserve is also keeping a really close eye on because they can't just raise interest rates really aggressively right now, looking at the jobs market and saying, well, it's too strong, let's hike those interest rates as high as possible. They don't want to do that because they don't want to restrict our economy too much and cause unemployment to go way up because that would cause an outright recession. But with Jerome Powell talking about interest rates kind of possibly going down or slowing down in the future means that the Federal Reserve might believe that they're hitting a point that is necessary and restrictive enough for our economy. It's not enough that's going to send us into a recession, but it is enough that inflation is going to come down. And what exactly that means, well, we don't actually know. It could mean a lot of job loss, and we don't know exactly how many jobs, but the Federal Reserve has estimated that unemployment could reach around 5% by the end of 2023. And that, of course, was when they were talking about their interest rates being at around the 5 5% mark. But if they go up even higher, then we could see 6% unemployment or possibly 7%. It really just depends on how high those interest rates go. What you've got to remember too is over the last couple of years, the Federal Reserve has printed a lot of money and has done a lot in its quantitative easing program. They had trillions of dollars being poured into the stock market, and a lot of these businesses invested it. And a lot of these businesses are now holding onto it for just in case something goes wrong in our economy. That could mean that the jobs market stays stronger for a lot longer, and it actually tricks the Federal Reserve into raising their interest rates a little bit too high. The ultimate question though is, when does it all stop, and when do we actually see that flip? Well, we don't really know the answer to that either. The Federal Reserve wants to bring down inflation to its 2% target level. Right now, inflation is at 7.7%, so we have a very, very long way to go. Interest rates are likely to stay restrictive until then, which means it's going to be harder for Americans to get a mortgage. It's going to be harder for people to spend on a credit card. It's going to be harder for businesses to spend their money and grow, and they're not going to be getting a lot of investor money, and they're not going to be getting a lot of consumer money. So that just means ultimately a lot of constricting and a lot of slowing down for our business sector. Jobs may actually linger for a very, very long time because, like I said, businesses may have a ton of cash on hand right now, and they may have a lot of investments that they're kind of using to leverage themselves away from this economic slowdown. So we could actually see jobs actually hang on longer than a lot of other markets. But if we do start to see the jobs numbers fall, that will eventually bleed into the other aspects of our economy. Think about it this way: if we do see unemployment start to go up, if we do see layoffs continue to get even higher in the United States, then people are going to have a hard time buying groceries, and that's going to hurt that business sector. People are going to have a hard time paying their mortgage and their auto loans and their credit card loans, and that means that the entire broader economy is going to go down. And again, this is what the Federal Reserve wants. They want spending to be a whole lot slower. Because Americans were very overextended in a lot of different ways because of 0% interest rates and stimulus checks, that means that we had a ton of money all at once, and it also means that inflation was very high. All of that needs to come back down now to a regular level that actually is sustainable for our economy's future. Everything in our economy needs to be in a balance for it to actually work, and you could definitely see over the last couple of years we did not have balance. We didn't have balance in the jobs market or the housing market or the stock market. Now the Federal Reserve is kind of raising its interest rates to lower demand and once again increase supply for everything. So that way we once again have that equilibrium. But what that could eventually cost is the entire jobs market flipping in 2023. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.